When I began my career in the Navy as a chaplain, I had a very rough first duty assignment at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And as I began my tour there, I had a chance to meet some very wonderful people, a lot of wonderful young men and women serving in the Navy and the Marines, and all the branches for that matter, a lot of wonderful career officers enlisted that I learned so much from. And one of the things I did a lot of, and a lot of the chaplains did while we served in the military, was a lot of counseling. And and all of us heard so many different stories and so many different things that went on. And even in the midst of all that I've heard during my priesthood and as a chaplain, this particular story still is one that stands out to me. On one particular day, there was a sailor who came into my office for some help and counseling. And he shared the story of his upbringing to kind of give context to what he was going through. He shared the story that as a young man, whenever he did something wrong, even if it was something that he wasn't aware that was wrong, that would upset his father would take him out to the back shed and proceed to beat him up, literally. Draw blood, sometimes use a belt. And then after that was done, he had to clean himself up and come back into the house and proceed on. And this is how he was raised growing up. This was his experience of discipline from his father. And so this young sailor went on and got married and had a young baby. And he came to me with a struggle that he was having in his life. He said every time this baby cries, his young baby girl, he begins to get very angry. And he wants to hit her and smack her because that's what he learned growing up as a young boy. That's how you handle these things. And yet, as he shared this story with me with tears coming down his face, he said, you know what, chaplain, as much as I feel like I want to do this, there's a part of me that says, don't do this. There's a part of me that's saying not to treat my baby girl this way. And so as he shared that story with me, I first of all thanked him for coming into my office. I said to him that he demonstrated a tremendous amount of courage coming in and sharing that story with me, because for him, as a young sailor, it could have a lot of different effects on his employment and things like that. But what I did was I encouraged him. We had some time to talk and pray together. I let him know that his inclination to not do that was the right one. And then I had some ongoing counseling with him. I got him into a group that helps to serve the Navy called the Family Service Center, got him some more intensive counseling for himself and for his wife as well. And over time, there was an incredible healing that took place in his life. And I saw him a time later where he said he no longer was filled with those images of hitting and hurting his baby that way, but was rather handling discipline in a much different way that he felt good about and the family felt good about. This father, in this process of what he was going through, literally gave the gift of love. And he gave it first and foremost to one of the most important people in his life, and that was his little girl, Daddy's little girl. And I feel like this young sailor was very much a heroic father, a heroic person to me, and still is to this day. He had honesty. He was able to come to me and go to the Family Service Center and even to his wife and say to all of us, you know, something is wrong here. Something is wrong in me and what I want to do, and I need some help changing these thoughts that are coming into my mind. Even though my father treated me this way growing up, I just know intuitively in my spirit, I shouldn't do this. Tremendous step on his part. He asked for help. Again, that's something that men aren't known for. But he demonstrated this request and this need, which again was heroic. And he was really willing to go through the process of healing. Again, you couldn't imagine this young boy growing up and literally being beaten by his father, physically abused over time. No excuses for what his father did, but I'm guessing that's the way his father treated him as well, and his father before him. And it was time to change that pattern of abuse into something different. And so he was willing to take time to heal. He was willing to go through counseling and supervision and transformation as well to become a better father. What a wonderful journey that he went on, and what a wonderful story that I can share with you on this Father's Day weekend. You know, there are some interesting stats about fathers. A child raised without a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and to commit crimes. They're 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and they're 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Those are just the stats. Denzel Washington recently shared about himself and 2 friends growing up. He grew up in a rather rough neighborhood as a young African-American boy. And he shared the story that at 7 years old, police weren't arresting them yet. But they were doing some things that they shouldn't be doing. By the time they reached 13, they were doing some really bad things. He goes on to share that one of his friends ended up getting 10 to 15 years in prison. His other friend got 20 to 25 years in prison. Denzel Washington was the only one who did not go to prison. And what he said, what he credited to, was that he was the only one out of his friends that had a father in the home. The only one. And it was his father and his mother that during that turbulent time as a teenager that pointed him in a different direction. And they literally steered him away from a life in prison to a life that contributes to you and me in all of the roles that he's been in to this day. You know, it's interesting as we think about all that's going on in our culture right now and all of the fighting and all of the protesting and all the rioting, all that's occurring, there's a big cry that's going out. And as I think about Denzel's story and as I think about the reality of what's going on in our culture and has been over time, you know, I realize that one of the important elements I think that is missing in this moment are fathers and men. And that really is the heart of my message today. What is needed in this hour are fathers and men to stand up and be part of what is going on in this situation in a way that is constructive. You know, if you look at our welfare system, what ends up happening in the welfare system that was created a number of decades ago is that what the system financially supports is basically single motherhood. Now, let me be honest, I am a big fan of single parents because they do an incredible job. In fact, as a Navy chaplain at Pearl Harbor, I was the first chaplain to form a group called the Singles Parent Support Group. And we met, mainly women, of course, but we met and we talked with one another and we supported one another, and it was really a wonderful time of being together. So I want to let you know I support single parents. But one of the realities about our welfare system is that it perpetuates this reality of single parents. And so what ends up happening is that you have a young mother who has a child, and then they realize that if they have another child, they'll get more money from the government. And they'll end up having kid after kid after kid. And you know, Jan and I used to talk about this a lot of times. Jan was assistant medical director at a wonderful medical clinic on the near west side of Cleveland. And there would be family after family after family that would come through the door that were part of the welfare system. And you'd see the grandma who had a number of different kids. She was a single parent, did an incredible job as a single mom. Father was nowhere to be found. And then you would see her daughter a little bit later on, who was about 17 or 18, coming into the same clinic, who had her first baby. Guess what? No father around. And she was going to be living out the same pattern of having 2 or 3 or 4 different kids. Sometimes they don't even know who the fathers are. And what ends up happening is we have a welfare system that really perpetuates poverty and perpetuates single parents that all they can do is to survive what's going on. I have a really strange and crazy idea. How about we stop funding that, and how about we provide money for the outcome that we want? I submit before you, maybe we should begin to change that whole system, and let's actually provide money where there's going to be a father and a mother together in the family. Can you imagine that? Oh, Father Joe, that'll never happen. That'll be crazy. Well, why can't it happen? You know, these people that are living in poverty, whites, browns, blacks, I don't care what your color is, they're human beings. And they deserve better than this. And we need to fund the outcome that we want. And I believe one of the most important things we can do in this hour is to say, you know what? The family matters. It doesn't take a village. It takes a father and a mother and a solid family home. That's what it takes. And that's what we're missing in this hour. And we should fund the outcome that'll work for all people. For all people. You know, in our story today in the Old Testament, we find a family that's going through crisis. And there is a father and a mother and another mother in the situation. They're all together, I imagine, in their tent, kind of hanging out. And Sarah saw the two boys playing together, Isaac and Ishmael. And there's no sister wives going on here. She says Hagar and her son have to go. Now, Abraham as a father was troubled because he was the father of both of these kids. And so he didn't want this to happen. And just to give you a little context about this story, you would kind of have the image that Isaac and Ishmael were both babies playing together, but that would not be true. You remember the story that Ishmael was actually born a number of years earlier. So at this time, when you include the weaning of Isaac, Ishmael at this time was actually 16 years old. So Hagar and Ishmael have been in the house for a while. And all of a sudden, Sarah, after she gets her baby, says, they got to go. This is a big crisis. This is a big deal. This is a big struggle. But you know the important thing about it? Abraham was there. He was the father, and he was there to be part of the solution. God spoke to him in the midst of this very turbulent moment in their family. I can only imagine. And he said to him, listen to Sarah. Isaac is your future. And by the way, Hagar and her son will be provided for, and he will be the father of a great nation as well because he is your son. So Abraham listens to Sarah and listens to Hagar. He sends them off, and God's angel provides for them in the desert. And so again, our Father in heaven provides a way in the midst of the situation. Abraham did not even see this coming. When he woke up that day, he did not even have a clue that this was going to occur. But it did. And so Abraham, as the father, was there. He and Sarah and Hagar were working this thing out. And God was involved as well and gave direction and provision in the midst of this situation. What is needed in this hour are fathers and men who will actually be a part of their families, who will actually be a part of their culture and their situation, and be a voice that is heard. Fathers and men that are here today in the sanctuary and that are with us online today, I want to be an encouragement to you. I want to be an encouragement to you, especially in an hour when your voice is not being honored and your voice is being shouted down. And there may be times where you share something and you feel like the people in your life and the people in your family aren't even listening to you. And that might even be true. But God has anointed you to be a man and or anointed you to be a father and has called you to have a voice. And I affirm that here today, and I speak blessing to that, and I encourage you in that. So fathers and men that are gathered here today, I ask you, what is it exactly that you need from God today as a man, as a father? What is it you need from God? What is it that troubles you in your own heart? What is it that you're struggling with? Hopefully you don't have a sister's wife situation right now. I'll give you to God and I'll be praying for you, but boy, that'll be a rough one. But what is it that troubles you in your heart? Are there some relational issues that need to be resolved? Maybe with someone else that's around you. Maybe something that's been fractured for a while. Maybe just something in your own heart you need some clarity about. And what is the next step for all that are concerned? And do you need some heavenly provision in the midst of all of that? You know, fathers and men, I think a lot of times in our lives, what ends up happening is that we might begin to try to engage certain situations or people, and then an argument breaks out or a struggle breaks out. And what we learn from that is, okay, I'm not going to do that again, and I'm not going to engage this situation again. And then you shrink back, you go to the corner, never to emerge again. Get out of your corner. Get out of your hole. Get out of the closet. You know, I've been married now for a number of years. It'll be 40 years in September. And I've learned some things during that time. I'm not perfect, but I've learned one thing about fights. You got to pick them. After all this time, that's what I've learned. And I think Janice learned that too. There's some things that happen in our relationship. It's like, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even going to engage that because I've been there so many times. She's been there so many times. Not even going to waste my time. And there's a lot more peace because of that. Thank God. Both ways. But there are some things that come up and it's like, yep, fight on. Fight on. Because this is worth fighting over. This is worth having a conversation about. This is worth a struggle to come to a common mind, hopefully. And so men and fathers that are gathered here today, I want to be an encouragement to you in your masculinity. You're a man because God created you that way. And as much as our culture might be confused, God is not confused. If he created you as a man or a woman, guess what? You're a man or a woman. Live with it. Embrace it. Celebrate it because God does. I affirm your fatherhood. I affirm your masculinity. I affirm that God has called you to be a man in this hour, in this moment in which we live. And God is calling you and me to stand up, to be his man in this hour, to do it in a way that's loving, to do it in a way that listens, and to do it from a place of strength in the Lord God Almighty. Would all of the fathers and the men that are here today, would you please stand? And if you're watching online, I don't care where you are. You might be sitting on the couch, lying in bed. I want you to stand up as well. Go ahead and stand up wherever you are, men and fathers. And I want to invite you to join me in prayer right now for all of those that are standing. Our Father in heaven, we give you thanks for the fathers and the men that are present in this sanctuary here today and that are watching online as well. And we thank you for the examples in our lives of men who have been heroic. Men who have had the courage to be able to say, you know what, I need help. I'm struggling with this. I'm not quite sure what to do. And have emerged on the other side a better man. We give you thanks for the fathers and the men today that are standing with their families and standing with their relationships, wherever they may be, whatever they're going through. Lord, I speak blessing to them. I speak grace and I speak favor. I ask for healing and reconciliation as much as possible in every relationship. And I pray more than anything, there be a welling up of your Holy Spirit deep within every father and every man who is watching this, that they would be affirmed in who you have made them to be. Thank God that you're a father. I thank God that you're a man. I thank God for who he's created you to be. May you fulfill your masculinity with a sense of joy, with a sense of purpose, and with a sense of God's blessing and favor upon your life. Amen. Amen.